Welcome to TV Africa. Thank you so much for joining us and always being part of us. This is Africa Today. My name is Nahawi Kejura, but first are the headlines. President Yoweri Museveni to set up new anti-corruption unit. Odinga maintains Tuesday protests to continue despite ban from the government. Ugandan Parliament passes harsh anti-LGBTQ bill, mostly unchanged. In a sports news today, the countdown is on as Pearl of Africa rally beckons. Once again, thank you so much for joining us. We start with one of our top stories now. The Parliament of Uganda has passed the Anti-Homosexuality Bill 2023 after President Yoweri Museveni last week returned it back to the House with proposals for reconsiderations. We have more on this report.
Uganda's parliament on Tuesday passed one of the world's strictest anti-LGBTQ bill, mostly unchanged, including long jail terms and death penalty after President Museveni requested some parts of the original legislation to be torn down.
I beg to report that the Committee of the Whole House has reconsidered the bill entitled the Anti-Homosexuality Bill 2023 and passed it with amendments discussed in the House. I beg to report.
Despite some changes, the new bill retains most of the harshest measures of the legislation adopted in March, which drew condemnation from the United States, European Union, United Nations, and major corporations. The provisions retained in the new bill include the death penalty for so-called aggravated homosexuality and a 20-year sentence for promoting homosexuality, which activists say could criminalize any advocacy for the rights of lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer citizens. Aggravated homosexuality includes having gay sex when HIV positive. The legislation now heads back to Museveni, who can sign it, vet it, or return it again to Parliament. Museveni, a vocal opponent of LGBTQ rights, has signaled he intends to sign the legislation once certain changes are made, including measures to rehabilitate gay people. The legislation was amended to stipulate that merely identifying as LGBTQ is not a crime. It also revised a measure that obliged people to report homosexual activity to only require reporting when a child is involved. After a voice vote that followed less than half an hour of debate, Speaker of Parliament Anita Among urged lawmakers to remain defiant in the face of international criticism, describing the bill as needed to protect Uganda's children.
I now put a question that the Anti-Homosexuality Bill 2023 as returned by His Excellency the President, be read the third time and do pass. Those in favor say and contrary nay. May I sign it?
A bill for an act titled
Western governments suspended aid, imposed visa restrictions, and curtailed security cooperation in response to another anti-LGBTQ law Museveni signed in 2014. The US government said last week that it was assessing the implications of the looming law for activities in Uganda under its flagship HIV/AIDS program.
Thank you so much, reporter. Moving on, in a top stories, President Yoweri Museveni has promised to set up yet another anti-corruption unit inside the State House, with a proposed body this time being dedicated to combating bribery in public offices. Now, the new unit will be dedicated to combating bribery in public offices. We have more on this report. President Museveni announced his latest anti-graft plans in a Labour Day speech delivered in the rural eastern Uganda district in Namutumba yesterday afternoon. Once created, the new unit will join a considerably long list of constitutional bodies like the Inspectorate of Government, Auditor General, Parliament Judiciary, and Police in the fight against corruption. Already, there are at least 2 known parallel organs located inside State House for the same purpose. The State House Anti-Corruption Unit, with its unlimited reach, together with the Health Monitoring Unit, which is supposed to keep tabs on public health service delivery. That annual loss was revealed following a study commissioned by the IG in the 2022, which was conducted by the Government Transparency Institute, an international think tank in good governance. The think tank found at least a significant portion of the losses which accounted for 44% of government revenue in 2019 could be attributed to bribes paid to tax officials. Mr. Museveni denounced a group within the tax body, Uganda Revenue Authority, which he said goes around waylaying and blackmailing traders. Uganda's tax collection agency has long been criticized by Mr. Museveni as a den of thieves. A number of senior staff, including commissioners, have been sacked over corruption over the years. Currently, there is an ongoing investigation by the Inspector General Government into whistleblower reports of grand corruption inside URA. Africa Today takes a quick break. We shall come back with the international news. Welcome back for the break. You're still watching TV Africa, the right to know. In international news, as fighting in Sudan entered its third week with over 500 people killed since clashes erupted on April 15th, the United Nations on Monday warned more than 800,000 people could flee fighting in Sudan, where gun battles and explosions against shock the capital in violence of the latest truce agreed between warring generals. We have more on this report.
Hundreds have been killed and thousands wounded since fighting erupted on April 15th between Sudan's Army Chief Abdel Fattah al-Burhan and Mohamed Hamdan Daglo, who commands the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces. Millions of Sudanese, unable to afford the inflated prices required to escape the battles, have sheltered in their homes with dwindling food and water and frequent power cuts as fighter jets thunder through overhead on raids that have drawn heavy anti-aircraft fire. Burhan and Daglo have floated multiple ceasefires and extended the latest by 72 hours late on Sunday. Kenya President William Ruto on Monday convened a meeting to mount a response to the worsening humanitarian crisis in Sudan. Ruto stressed the importance of finding ways to provide humanitarian support to the people of Sudan, whether fragile truces to hold the internal power struggle hold or not. Among the attendees at the meeting was UN Humanitarian Affairs and Emergency Relief Coordinator Martin Griffiths. Egypt, in an Arab League emergency meeting in Cairo, proposed a draft resolution on Monday that called for an immediate and comprehensive cessation of fighting.
Moving on, in international news, Kenya's opposition leader Raila Odinga has maintained calls for Tuesday national protests over the high cost of living, citing government unwillingness and lack of good faith in holding the talks to address its main issues. Odinga, together with member top leadership in the Azimio coalition, have pledged to resume weekly protests despite the recent move by the government to hold bipartisan talks in parliament to address its main issues that include a reform towards the electoral body and opening of the election servers to ascertain vote validity. The former Premier Raila Odinga on Monday also cautioned the president against gauging the opposition during protests, further accusing the police of being partisan when exercise their rights through demos. The government, on the other hand, warned the opposition against the Tuesday demos, Azimio coalition, to avoid violence and destruction of property, urging the Raila-led team to embrace bipartisan talks in parliament. President Ruto also reminded the opposition that it was his duty as the head of government to protect the rights and property of all Kenyans, warning that he will not allow protests in the city centre. Away from that, residents and survivors of the Kama massacre in Burkina Faso on April 20th recounted their experience at a press conference north of the capital, Ouagadougou. On Friday, a human rights group announced the number of victims was more than double the official figure of 60 deaths.
According to Dauda Belem, spokesperson for Kama residents, babies died on the backs of their executed mothers in a carnage which lasted more than 6 hours after the soldiers left the village for Dingoiri. The spokesman added that in total, 147 people were killed in Kama, including 28 women, 45 children from 9 days old to 14 years old, and 9 wounded. In the surrounding villages, 9 people were killed, all men. Aminata Kindo, one of the survivors of the Kama massacre, recalled that when she went to her home, some of the men saw the turn of events and went indoors. She added that from inside their houses, they could hear their husbands screaming in pain from the beatings they were receiving after they were executed. Burkina Faso's armed forces faced an Islamist insurgency by groups affiliated with Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State group, which swept in from neighboring Mali in 2015.
Thank you so much, reporter. Moving on, hundreds gathered on Friday in Mali's capital Bamako to call for MINUSMA, the UN peacekeeping mission in the West African country, to leave. Now, protesters responded to a call by local limited groups close to the country's military junta to attend the protest meeting. We have more on this report. Mali, ruled by a military junta since the first coup in 2020, is battling armed groups linked to Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State organization with the help of Russian paramilitary mercenaries. The demonstration comes at a time when the Malian army has suffered one of the largest attacks by armed jihadist groups in central Mali, and when MINUSMA human rights reports frequently accuse the Malian army of human rights violations. The protests, many waving Russian flags, say the UN peacekeepers' decade-long presence is no longer required. The regime-supported anti-United Nations tension set to continue to rise with presidential elections set for next year, which some might not want to be analyzed too carefully by neutral observers or peacekeepers. Africa Today takes a quick break. She'll come back with business, health, and sports. Welcome back for the break. You're still watching TV Africa, the right to know. Now, talking matters business, Tunisia's largest union on Monday attacked the government's handling of negotiations with the IMF on a loan to bail out the North African country as it slides deeper into debt. Now, Tunisia is seeking a bailout package worth nearly $2 billion fund with conditions any aid on a series of reforms. We have more on this report. While giving his May Day speech in the capital Tunis, Noureddin Tababou of the Tunisian General Labour Union said that protesters in the country's second city denounced an IMF government saying no to colonization. Taboubi said that they back the position of the President Kais Saied, who last month rejected what he called IMF diktats for Tunisia to be granted the loan. Despite an agreement in principle on the loan, agreed in October, talks with the IMF have been stalled for months over Saied not committing to restructure public bodies and lift subsidies on basic goods. The IMF has called for legislation to restructure more than 100 state-owned firms which hold monopolies over many parts of the economy and in many cases are heavily indebted. Taboubi on Monday said the president had aligned himself with the UGTT, which opposes the sale of public companies and the lifting of subsidies. In a health news today, medical staff working at the Al Now Hospital in Omdurman, Sudan, have complained of lack of resources as they struggle to deal with the influx of patients. According to Dr. Ala Mohammed, a doctor at Al Now Hospital, there is a huge lack in the medical teams and a huge lack in the hospital's facilities. He added that in normal circumstances, there are teams now, the shift is longer as not enough doctors exist and that are only 2 doctors or 1 doctor who covers 1 or 2 departments and sometimes 3 departments. Volunteers at a facility also complained that there was no fuel for ambulances and the dialysis department was lacking in resources. At least 512 people, including civilians and combatants, have been killed since April 15th, with another 4,200 wounded, according to the Sudanese Health Ministry. The Doctors Syndicate, which tracks civilian casualties, has recorded at least 387 civilians killed and 1,928 wounded. In sports news today, the Shell v Power Pal of Africa Uganda rally will set into motion this weekend in Jinja District, eastern Uganda. 31 crews will take on the challenge, but only 7 crews will be eligible to score for ARC points. We have more on this report.
The Power Rally comes as the second rallying event on the national calendar, as well as the third round of the Africa Rally Championship. Unlike last year, which saw many foreign crew entries, this year's edition of the Power Rally will only host 2 foreign crews, Karan Patel and Rio Smith from Kenya. Karan Patel and Tausif Khan in a Ford Fiesta are on their second attempt for the ARC title. The Kenya Rally champions are currently leading the African Championship following victory in their home event last March. Patel will go head-to-head with Uganda's Yasin Nasser and Jas Mangat in the search for maximum ARC points. For Rio Smith, the 20-year-old will be reviving his chances at the Junior African Championship title after losing out on points in the home event. A top finish will put him back on the chance. The rally will rev off with a qualifying stage to determine the ARC start order. 7 stages will be covered on Saturday, while 5 stages, including a super special stage, will seal a total competitive distance of 205.27 kilometers. Given the current weather, it is evident that this year's PAL edition will yet again require crews to pull off their best in the wet conditions.
Well, thank you so much for your reporter. It is at this particular time that I thank you for being with us. And always joining us, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We shall keep updating you. It is TV Africa, the right to know.